Hey guys, welcome back for day 17. Today I am going to finish up pretty much building all of the rest of the countertops and drilling holes for faucets and all sorts of fun stuff like that. So first things first, I'm going to finish up painting the rest of these cabinet doors. I'm going to put on a second coat, but what you see me doing right now, these are the little end tables or the side tables that are in the bed area. And I need to take the old countertop off, one, so I can repair this because it broke when I took it apart originally when I was demoing it. And two, because there's going to be a new countertop on this. So I don't want to keep the old one, but I do need to save it so I know what size it is and where to put my round corners, all that fun stuff. So I'm just using a screwdriver and a hammer. I don't even know if that's a screwdriver. That kind of looks like a little scraping tool to pry this off. Sometimes you get lucky and there's screws on these. Sometimes you get unlucky and they've put 17,000 staples in it, which this is the case. So I'm just kind of working section by section to pop it off to make sure that I don't break it, because these are actually just made of like some type of I don't even know, like MDF. And so you get it wet or you break it and it's done. So you got to be really careful with these. All right, so I am resetting up my sprayer right here, and I'm just going to go back and give these a quick dusting, if that's what you want to call it. So these have already been painted, and this is going to be a second coat just to get all of the spaces that I missed the first time, and I'm making sure to get the edges really good. And then these will pretty much be done because I drilled the holes for the cabinet handle or the handle pulls before. So these are going to be ready to put up once they're dry, which is really exciting because once that happens, it starts to look like an actual renovated camper. And it looks a whole lot better than how it looks now. All right, so here is that piece of wood that I cut earlier for the bathroom countertop. Now there is my vessel sink that I'm putting in. I'm putting this actually in because I need to cut that rounded corner right there. So this is me kind of just eyeballing where I think the corner should go, where I'm going to cut this rounded edge right here, because I wasn't quite sure how far forward or back I could go based on how big the sink was and how far back I could push the faucet. So this is me. I've kind of got the two corner marks and making sure that they're an equal distance from each other. And then I'm going to get the sink and flip it upside down and kind of draw a rounded edge right there because I want it to be somewhat symmetrical to the rounded shape on the actual sink itself. And so this is going to just give it a nice finished, I don't know, not like oblong or like weird shape to it, like a weird curve. I want it to match and be equal distance from the sink. So it actually turned out pretty good. So I'm going to rough cut this with my jigsaw, and then I'm going to put this on my oscillating sander and round off that edge really nicely. Again, do love this oscillating sander. It just makes life a whole lot easier. And you see it's a lot easier to do it when you have a smaller countertop because I have my hand right there near the sander and I can keep that corner nice and flat on the table, which gives me a perfectly square, rounded curve. Square as in up and down, not obviously a square corner. All right, so now that I've got that done, I'm going to put it back in, and then I'm going to put the sink on top of it and then the faucet in the back. And I'm going to make sure that this looks relatively close to how I want it to look, and it does. And so I'm kind of putting these in position, and then I'm going to draw basically around my faucet right there so I know where to drill the hole for that. And then I'm going to draw on the inside of the sink right here. That way I know where to drill a hole for the drain to go in. Now, if you want to be super technical about this, obviously you can and measure perfect center of this and go that way, but I like to eyeball it here, and then you'll see me get my pencil and kind of put some more marks on the front part of the countertop right there, and that's because once I had it in position, I didn't like how it was still sticking out a little bit and it wasn't like perfectly even with the actual sink itself. So I'm just going to trim that up a little bit with my oscillating sander, take a little bit more off. And I made lots of marks around the sink so I know exactly where it's supposed to go. And then I just get a hole saw and just put a big old hole in it. Just use your best judgment here because some drains are different sizes. So make sure that it's going to be able to be big enough to fit your drain in. Same thing with the hole in the back. Make sure that it's going to be big enough for your water lines to fit through. And they're all kind of different. So you're going to have to look at the actual faucet that you got and determine which size hole you're going to need to make for that. All right, now I'm going to put that to the side for a second, and I'm going to start working on these. These are the little side tables. I'm going to take that trim piece off because I get a better measurement that way. I'm going to first start by cutting these to width and to length. So this is me cutting it to length. No, it's width right now. I'm cutting this to width. And that was just a scrap piece that I had. And then this is another, pretty much the rest of that 3/4 inch plywood that I had. So I'm going to finish cutting that. And I got a nice big old splinter in my hand, like a giant one. So that's always fun when that happens. And you can see exactly how big it is right there. So that was fun, but it's okay. I didn't bleed on anything. So that's the most important part. So now I'm going to finish cutting this. I cut one side and then, so I have a nice straight edge right there, flipped it around and then cut the other side. So now this one is cut to length. So there is one end table right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut the other one to length. And then I can start putting the curvature on it and sanding all that fun stuff out. Now to put the curve on this, I pretty much just put the old one on top and then drew the curve around it. And marked, if you see I marked on the end right there, I marked where an angle is. So there's actually an angle at these. That way it angles downward from top to bottom and it's flush with the wall. Because if you remember, the back wall's curved. So that's why there's kind of a, I don't even remember, 45 maybe degree angle right there. And I'll cut that in just a little bit. But first, I'm going to go ahead and rough cut the rounded corner right there on both sides. Again, just using the jigsaw to do this. You're going to see me do the same thing about 40 times in this video. So if there's any doubt, just go back and watch one of the 40 times. All right, so this is where I'm cutting that 45 degree edge. Make sure you know which is the top and which is the bottom because you don't want to cut the edge the wrong way. So pay attention to that. And this is actually a special sled that I have for cutting 45 degree angles on my table saw. And so, yep, you can see that one is cut at an angle now. So when I put it up, it's going to be flush with the wall. You don't have to do this. It just gives it a nice finish look, I guess is what you say. And it just makes it just one less little gap on the wall that you have to fill in. So I would recommend doing this. Just make sure you know which side is up and which side is down, because now that we've cut the corners of it already, we've rounded the corners, it does matter which side you put it in, because there is a left side and there is a right side. So just don't confuse yourself with which side is the left and which side is the right. Okay, so again, just sanding down those corners. Make sure they're nice and flat and square, because it will matter once you start to put the edge banding on. If it's not completely like square up and down, and if it's not like a completely flat sand, then the edge banding is going to be weird. Also, I just really like it when you open new edge banding and it's like spiral, 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 and it just makes me so happy. So that's why I included that. Okay, so let's talk edge banding. I honestly don't know if I have shown you guys how I do this. I know I have in one of the other videos where I did countertops, but I don't think I've done it in the renovation series. So here we go. This is birch edge banding with my birch 3/4 inch plywood. And I basically just kind of cut it to whatever length I think it needs to be. That way I don't have the whole roll hanging off and falling on the floor. And then I start with one side and I just slowly work my way over. This will shrink a little bit. So that's why I go a little bit at a time versus trying to like tack the whole thing on and then go back and like re-iron the whole thing, because you'll end up with like bubbles and spots that are too big or too small. It just doesn't work that way. There is a special iron for edge banding as well, but I don't have one of those. And y'all know that I don't really iron clothes. I'm going to be honest with you. So I stole this from my house because I have given up on the housewife, just like a normal housewife. So now I'm a feral housewife, where all of my things that I would use inside the house are now in my shop because I use them for things they're not supposed to be used for. Anyway, my point is totally okay to improvise if you don't have something, because I've used this for a long time and it works honestly better than the edge banding tool. So here we go. I'm going to put this on all of them and you're going to kind of get the hang of it. So this is, it's probably an inch wide. This edge banding is an inch wide and the plywood is like 3/4 of an inch. So you'll have some overhang on both sides, which is fine because then I'm going to go back and trim that off and then I'll sand it. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and iron them onto all of the pieces here, and then I'll go back and I'll do all of that one step at a time. So just be careful when you stack them like that because you don't want it to like accidentally crunch one side and then it's going to look weird if like part of it crunches off. So one thing that I do want to note about these corners is this is kind of a tight corner right here to wrap the edge banding around. And so I pull it out a little bit and then you'll see me do it right here. I pull it out and then I heat the edge banding and then I'll slowly pull it tight and loop it around and smooth it out with my fingers. That way I don't have any bubbles or gaps right there because it is a tight corner. If it's too hot for your fingers, you can definitely get like a socket or something and run the socket along the edge. That actually works really well too, especially for like interior corners. Those a socket works really good. Okay, so here is the part where I get a knife, and this is just kind of a box knife. There's a lot of other things that work just as good. And I kind of shave off the top and the bottom parts, that excess edge banding. And I do this because it just makes it sand a lot better without, I guess, trying to peel the edge banding back off when you sand it. So the most important thing with this is to just go slow and notice any extra like bubbles or anything. And when I do notice it, I just go ahead and take care of it when I see it because I don't want to forget about it, and just kind of iron it on a little more. And then now when you sand, this is kind of an important little detail here. There's a direction that I sand this. And so you want to sand this in a clockwise direction. So I do that because if you have two separate pieces and you're going and you're sanding in a clockwise direction, that would mean that the tension point up at the top of it would bring the tension from the edge banding into the wood. You want to bring it into the wood and you don't want to bring it outside of the wood because then that would mean you're trying to separate the two pieces, if that makes any sense. Honestly, I don't know how well it would work if you sanded it the other direction because I don't think I've ever tried it, but you're more than welcome to test that theory out. That's how I've always done it, and I'm not going to redo it because it works really well this way. And it kind of if you accidentally cut the edge banding too short, it'll actually push it in the little gap and not out of the little gap that you've just made. So that's my 2 cents on that. All right, so next is the faucet for the kitchen sink. So I just measured the middle point right there, and then I'm going to get the actual faucet and put it up there and make sure that it looks good where I want it to go. You can make this go in or out or wherever you want it to go. I've also done like soap dispensers and all sorts of fun stuff here, but I'm just making this one the sink for now. Or the faucet for now, but you can add anything that you want to this countertop and it's going to be the same way. So right here, I'm just using that little nut piece that screws up into the sink that holds everything together to trace how big I need the hole. And these are pretty standard size. I honestly don't remember what size this is, but they're all pretty standard. So again, just use your best judgment on how big you think you need the hole. And honestly, you're going to need to get it right the first time because if you make the hole too small, then it's kind of a pain in the butt to make it bigger. And if you make the hole too big, then obviously that's not good either. So try to get it right on the first time. Measure twice if you need to. All All right, so next I'm going to put the edge banding on the main countertop right here, just using the same method as I did everything else. This one's just a lot more area to cover, so that's why I saved this one for last. And again, just putting it on and ironing it on, and then I'm trimming it with like a box knife, a razor blade, whatever you have that's sharp and will cut edge banding. And then I go back and I re-iron it again, and then I'll flip it over and I'll trim that side, and then I'll start sanding it. So yeah, a lot of repetition in this video. So same thing, just sanding it in the clockwise direction, making sure not to rip the edge banding off that I just spent so long putting on. And obviously I sand the entire countertop when I do this too. I wait to sand the countertop specifically for this because I already know that I'll have my sander out and I don't want to have to sand it twice. I mean, I do sand it twice, just not bring my sander out twice. I should have said that differently. Anyway, moving on. So this part might not make a whole lot of sense until you actually see it come together. But if you guys remember, I have little end tables that I made in this camper that are beside the couch. But I want to make these like a little storage compartment. And so I'm going to make this countertop, I call it a countertop. It's not really. The top part of it has to lift up to be able to have storage inside of it. And now that like I think about this and I've done it once, I probably would build this differently the next time, because I built this in several different pieces and I just didn't like how they lined up once I got them inside the camper, and I had to do a lot of scribing to get it to fit the walls because the walls were not square in the camper, which also drives me nuts. That's another topic for another day. So there's 3 pieces for each side, so 6 in total, which is what you see me cutting right here. This is just me. I originally made this into one piece right here. This is going to be the piece that hinges up. And so my thought process was, let me cut it and I'll have a little piece of it hinge up and not the entire piece hinge up, because I didn't want the framing to show. And I know that probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I promise once you actually see the completed project part of it, it's going to make a whole lot more sense to you. So now that I've got this is the little piece that's going to go up into, like, it's going to latch up. So I'm just going to sand this and give it just a little bit of a rounded edge. That way it's not so sharp. And then put all of my pieces together. And as you see right here, there's lots of pieces. I would have made that square piece and the little tiny like short piece right there on the end. I would have made those one piece if I was going to do this again. And honestly, I don't know why I made it like this in the first place, but I was kind of not thinking ahead when I started to build these, and then I didn't have any more 3/4 inch birch. And if you know how expensive an entire sheet of birch is, you would have done the same thing. But that's okay. It still turned out looking good. I just would have done it differently. So right here, I have these USB plugs that I'm going to put on each side. And so this is me just drilling a hole for these USB outlets that I'm going to put there. I thought this would be just a nice little touch because it's a couch. And these are end tables. And I thought it would be cool to have a little something right there to charge your phone, especially since there's no outlets in like 110 outlets in the slide, which is pretty typical. That's not unusual. And these only run off of 12 volts, and I already have 12 volts that I can tap into. And we'll get into that tomorrow when I start doing a little more of the electrical work and random things. So I hope to see y'all then.